So I lean in. Why not? Maybe put a couple exclamation points after it. Make it feel like a war. Not gonna be a portal, I don't think. There we go. So that's the actual title. And if you know anything about my literature, that looks very similar. I'm actually plagiarizing a title from 1999. So if you saw us present on the portal back in November, where were we?
Washington.
Washington. So, what we realized is that the paper we were trying to write is going to be 80 pages, and I'm not going to write that paper. So we're breaking up our topics into easy to digest chunks, and the easiest thing to do is to test what's going on with NIL and the transfer rules on competitive balance. So my slide deck, after the third presentation, was down to 5 original slides, so I can move quickly through what's going on. But I like listening to Dan Patrick, and Chaz Barkley was on the other day, that was last week. I think what you're seeing now is just 3 every year. Excellent. Chaz Barkley can see it. He actually admitted that probably means that the smaller schools, I'll say Charlotte, we're a mid-major school. We lost our entire basketball team in the past 2 years. And one of our players, Grayson Kidd, is not playing on Tennessee. So maybe not getting NIL, but he's playing in the Final Four, which is better than Charlotte's done since 1997. So maybe the smaller teams will get less support. And he said, I don't know how you put the toothpaste back in the tube. I can't say it like Chaz Barkley, you know his voice. So our research questions are pretty straightforward. Competitive balance, we'll look at entry and attendance, and that's basically some anecdotes coming from my experience at UNC Charlotte. Kind of like the 12 reforms, everybody's talking about them already. Our data can come from Division I, all the Division I conferences from 08, 09 through 23, 24. You've seen all this already, so we don't need to belabor it too much, but the way that I came about, thought about this was that as you read all the court cases and you say, we're heading right towards where we're at. You read all the court cases that everybody talked about earlier. This is a logical conclusion. How it is the NCAA gets around it, extricate itself. I think Brad had a great point about unionization, but maybe they'll figure out a way. I'm always confident that politicians can figure a way. Pretty confident they'll figure a way. It won't be anything we recognize, but they'll figure it out. It's kind of what happened yesterday. I was like, your brain is exploding the next. I'm trying to figure out how this trade works. I made a mistake of writing the map down on the paper. So what we're thinking about, so the way I look at this is that basically we have these reforms that I think this is right, that they're only focused on these 5 sports, right? Football, men's, women's basketball, baseball, and hockey. So the remaining sports can do what they want with the transfer portal, come in and out, transfer as you want. So that might be something to look at in the future as what's going on in the other sports. But the way I treated it, and some people about this last night, is that this feels a lot like the free agency market before the reserve clause in baseball. So you go back into the 1870s, into the 1880s, and it's a free-for-all every season, right? The contract ends, and the players are out there running around bidding, or getting bids from everywhere. And of course, we know if you follow that history, the team owners are like, this sucks, right? And so who are the team owners? They're not private, but they're the schools. And I'm sure the schools are looking around going, this sucks. Having to pay players more. Yeah, revenue sharing, all these rules are coming into place, and it's going to be frenetic for the next year or so. But isn't this what we wanted as economists? We're just like, just let the market be free. And yeah, it sucks to be Charlotte because we had a good player, and a lot of good players, they're all gone, because we can't afford at the moment to keep them. But it is a free market. And unfortunately, it's not going to last very long, so we'll see. My guess is that if it was able to stick around, we would see exactly what we expect to see with the free labor market, but it won't be around long enough to really have the effect. Of course, everybody's squawking. Oh, the players are getting paid. Boo-hoo. They're leaving. Boo-hoo. This hurts the sport. The coaches can't maintain. They can't hold on to their power. And Saban's got to retire. And I was like, cry me a river, right? Like, whatever. As I joke, I said, if I have a guy at UNC Charlotte and has 2 AERs, guess what? I'm not keeping that person. I'm going to get bid away. And I can go back to my dean and say, hey, dean, and he's my best friend, and be like, I need $280,000 to keep this person. He's going to be like, that's not going to happen. So, I mean, again, in a free market, this is how this works. And all the boo-hooing and crying on ESPN, but as economists, I'll come, this is what we want. So, for the moment, at least, So the transfer rules, of course, have players going everywhere, and this to me leads to a lot of ambiguous outcomes. We know the costs are going down for leaving, costs are going down for recruiting. I won't mention the Camry or anything like that. Semantics to me, but great. So we have players and teams having greater costs. We should see more transfers or possibilities. We have players leaving from one team to the next, hopefully get higher win percentages, but as we saw with football, it's not obvious, right, that players are moving to actually play better. So in basketball, we see some of the same results, that you might be moving because you're proximate to home, or you're just getting paid more, but it doesn't mean that you can actually perform better. Of course, if you're leaving, then that might hurt the team that you're leaving. But on the flip side, maybe the coach said, it's just not working out. And so I think we have to figure out how to qualify why it is that people are leaving. Are you being kicked out? Are you being bid away? It's a constant problem with these labor markets. We don't really know exactly why people are leaving. But in the end, my take on it is that we have no idea what's going on with competitive balance. Maybe it's getting better. I was trying to think about this. Haves and have-nots. I like this. So we have the have-nots. Wait, the have-nots. These are the have-nots that have something. I got to work on my taxonomy. Anyway, I like the language. I'm going to figure out how to word this in. But yes, in the end, right, the lower guys in the SEC, like Georgia, we don't know that in basketball, but we can get one dude, and now we make it to the tournament and we lose, and gloriously lose other Bulldogs. We shouldn't have been there, but so we have one team, one player, a couple transfers, and now we're all set and good because we're terrible. Whereas maybe Kentucky, these are pretty good. Can they get a lot of transfers and make it a little better? Right, so maybe competitive balance in the SEC improves. In the AAC, where Charlotte plays, not really clear what's going on, right? And when it comes to in-arena attendance, I also say this is ambiguous, at least to begin with. But I'll just give you my anecdote and we'll come back to it. So my seatmates are in their 70s, and they've been at Charlotte since the late 70s. And the wife of the couple had quit coming to games this year. And when I asked them, I said, my colleagues, so what's up? Why is Carol not here? He's like, she doesn't like this anymore. She doesn't know these players. And she's kind of had this experience over the course of whatever number of years of kind of falling in love with the players, getting to know where they're from, right? Just kind of knowing their biography and following them through. Yeah, of course, people leave or whatever, but it's been bad. We're a terrible team. Not terrible, sorry, it's on video, but didn't win very much. And then it's pretty clear why, because we lost all of our great players. So whoever they got to bring in, yes, might have been good somewhere else. We had some kid play with Syracuse. Actually Syracuse, I guess. In New York, not anyway. I didn't see Elvis very much, but okay. So anyway, she kind of gave up. So I'm not interested in this anymore. So I can see that's one person that there should be more, right? So what did Carol do in an aggregate? So that's why we decided to look at in and arena attendance. So, so our data come from Sports Reference. Steve Lockheed's our scraper, so he scrapes all the data. And so we have wins, conference wins, points scored, points allowed. Of course, we're going to follow excellent for people in this room that are younger than this paper of mine, from 1999. Bringing back the old hits. Let's go. In 2002, there's another paper you guys don't sideline. I'm going to build up my own citation. So this DHHI is basically take the Herberdahl deviation from ideal. Okay, so this is another version. As was mentioned earlier, I think it's a little bit better than the idealized standard deviation ratio, but that's just here, why not? All right. And we identify portal, COVID, and so all these rules changes, and then the NIL. And I'll say that we're kind of grouping the NIL as the true NIL and the collectives together. So there is a distinction, but in the popular media, there doesn't seem to be much of a distinction between these, and promises. I did ask, but last year, did anybody see a Georgia player on a billboard anywhere? Did anybody see or hear anybody on the radio? Because I don't live in Georgia. Did you hear anybody on the radio station? Like maybe one player was like back in some community bank or whatever. Like, guys, there's no true NIL. But maybe in the future they'll actually require it. I know, exactly. That's all right. I walked in. No, we own it. That's all right. We got Scooter Gate and now Target. That's all right. We got two natties. All right. So following up my same strategy from before. So basically, I forget all the causal relationships. I don't care about doing what I did before, but here I'm just going to replicate what we did in 1999. we'll see how long this lasts in the referee pool before I get laughed out, or somebody goes, oh, by the way, this is not the best we can do. So I'm not causality, but we're gonna. This is, yeah, you're right. No. All right. So basically, controlling for. Oh, it's better. Lag dependent variables, so some AR1 process and competitive balance. Looking at the concentration of offensive talent, that's points scored, defensive talent, points allowed, and then the 3 transfer rules changes. Looking at them as a group ultimately, and then for in-arena attendance, we'll have attendance or large attendance against competitive balance and the transfer rules. And then eventually we'll bring in a major conference dummy variable, so the big 6 through our data, so we get the pack 10, 12 of them. We'll follow them and see if there's any differences across those interactions. All right, random effects estimation. And so what we got? Oh, so what I was going to say about this looks at competitive balance across the conferences, and all this is relative to the A10. It's not going to relate to you because Charlotte used to play in the A10, and now Davidson plays the A10. So the A10's out there somewhere. So it's a prototype. In this case, it's the reference conference. You can see that there are some error bands that go over 0. So there's some other conferences that look a lot like the A10, and then a whole bunch of them don't. And if I was in class, I'd be like, you know what we expect to see? I'm sorry. On the left-hand side is going to be the left is total wins, the right is conference wins. I'm not sorry. All right, so what we expect to see if I was talking in class would be like, you know what we expect to see over time is those conference converging on 0, right? If we have all the labor market going around, it's totally free, then we should see convergence of competitive balance, right? As players are moving around based upon their preferences with the team's qualities. But I'm afraid we're not going to see that because we're going to get rid of our free labor market here a lot. But if we look at competitive balance kind of over time, so on the left-hand side are your major conferences, on the right are your mid-majors. Smaller numbers better for competitive balance, higher numbers worse. And so these 2 graphs I looked at this morning, like those graphs actually suck. They're separate. They're next to each other. They're not scale. So the guys on the left, those are the majors, more competitive. On the right, mid-majors, less competitive, although they all seem to be wrapped up in the spaghetti graph on the right. And so I got it there. But what you can see is that basically we get some spiders. I'm sorry, the 3 lines are your reforms. So we get all sorts of variation back and forth. But for the most part, it's fairly stable. Not a lot happening after those reforms. Here's attendance, and not to scale. Left side of the majors, right side of the mid-majors. So the majors have, obviously bigger arenas and more demand than the mid-majors. Maybe some sort of a downward trend. If I was going to eyeball that a little bit, don't worry about the reforms. We're just kind of looking at the overall trend, maybe something happening in the downward direction. All right, and numbers. Okay, so what matters? The only thing that really matters, all this is fine, but it's all this stuff down here. Portal, COVID, NIL. And you see that COVID may be slightly significant, but basically nothing's happening. If you go down to the bottom with the joint hypotheses, you see the COVID trifecta, so those are the 3 reforms, jointly equal to 0. Okay, maybe we can reject that, but if we look at the major conferences, what's happening there. And if I go to the extreme of dropping the AR1 terms, then things start to get squirrely. So to me, if things are not as stable as you want them to be, then I get suspicious that those results are going to stand, and we're going to do more robustness checks, I guess you call them, later on. Later on being like next week, so we'll get to more. I get suspicious of that as well. If we look at per game attendance, now this is a little more interesting. We're looking at the portal, negative across the board. The COVID influence, not so much. And that's really the extra year of eligibility. And then NIL, negative. So consumers might be responding to these changes, even though competitive balance doesn't seem to be impacted. And if you look at the top, competitive balance doesn't impact attendance. And if you interact with competitive balance with major conferences, no differences there either. So that's nothing. Which might make sense. It backs up some other research in college football as well. So the big takeaway is that these see no real impact of competitive balance, and no difference across the major and mid-major conferences. But it seems like the consumers are responding. So that would kind of anecdotally match up with my friend Carol, who says, "Look, I'm not interested. I'm just not going to go." And there's another couple hundred her not showing up. Then that might be an indirect cost to this. But we don't know anything about the TV ratings. So the anecdotes say that the TV ratings might be up. So maybe we like to watch really good basketball on TV. And the guys in the arena, especially the old folk, want to relate more to the students and less concerned about the quality. In the future, though a lot of the stuff that was just, I'm looking at this like basically I'm copying it. Or we're all racing to the same finish line, maybe in different sports. So I like the idea that kind of figuring out who's going up and who's going down, why. Is it more likely that they're there for the money, for the proximity, or for the quality of play? I think Steve he had ripped the NBA data, so we can start matching up college players to their NBA careers. That's great, but half of our players that go pro at something else. The other half go to degrees. I said it only because like a couple years ago, like senior day, and it's like, well, this is the senior. Hello, congratulations. He's already got a contract to play in Greece. Like, that's awesome. I have no idea what you paid $10,000 in Greece, but hey, paid on $1,000, you'll knock yourself out. So having only the NBA data for mid-majors especially, probably not going to be ideal. So we'll figure out what we'll do from there. So whether or not it turns out that we can actually do some diff and diff based upon this heterogeneous treatment effects, maybe. These are models I've heard about. I've never really estimated them, so maybe it's not even appropriate. Thought about endogeneity issues. I ran a regression of this again. It turned out to be significantly related thing. And I throw it on the right-hand side of an equation. Oh shit. Okay, sorry. So endogeneity, which all right, somebody might bring up. But I'm trying to mess with my two instruments, especially the concentration of defensive talent and offensive talent forms. And those are also endogenous. I think it was a Bradley just kind of flippantly said, well, just do an instrument of variables. I love it. That's our generation. We learned to kind of measure, you got IVs, they're not IVs, they're everywhere. You know, they're over here, they're over there. And now we know IVs are really hard to find. So there is a new paper in the NPR work paper series just came out last week, looking at non-parametric calculus, so like try to figure out how to use some sort of variation, solve the endogeneity issue without instruments. I like the idea. I'd like to see if we figure it out. And then if that probably changes. In concentration of talents, we move with the football data, like maybe we should think more about how transfers are different across different positions. Basketball is less varied than football, so it may not be as and then with the tournament bids, that was a big talk, of course, the past couple of weeks. That well, all these transfers are screwing up all the the NCAA tournament bids, and can we believe what's happening during the regular season? I was just mentioning in the past presentation that maybe the way we've been doing this is not ideal. So I should have changed this to portal, but I still like that. But give you 10 minutes to get this.
So 10
Please. In terms of
college sports, different people won't watch it.
not invested in. Yeah.
And you got to dunk on that football.
You're right.
Not that you're
I have no desire to protect your right. Yeah, it's a good question. I should probably look into that in terms of our discussion. So I don't think she cares about them being professionals. I think she cares about them just not being around.
Well, that's a part. Yeah. I'm being with that, but yeah.
Right. So when you do away with NIL, still have the transfer portal. I think she'd be still.
But it's interesting to result in different from football where we don't. Because once you have the helmets, you don't even know who they are. Basketball is very personal, right?
So I was going to say this, and I think that's, remember the whole competitive balance discussion, rating season, wage inequality, like every sport comes out to be different. You can't find some unifying theory because every sport's significantly different or statistically different. So I kind of feel like the same thing's going to happen. They're going to find their football results, they're going to stand, we're going to find basketball results in our ideas. And then you can go to hockey and these other sports that are suffering from the pool, right? Probably find they're going to be different as well. So unfortunately for us, we can't find that unifying theory. But yeah, I'll look at this so I said graduate, he's actually an undergrad. So he just emailed me, he's like, am I supposed to calculate the DHHI for each conference in each year? I'm like, yes. So there we go, he's busy. So we'll see. Yeah, so basically, I have no idea what the women's team is showing us, because he's basically doing the data work right now. But whether we merge them together as one paper, obviously we don't have more papers. So we have to cite them more. Good point, we're ahead of you, or at least thinking up on the same lines, right? So,
You were now going with baseball in the 1870s. I wonder if a better analogy is it might be baseball in the 1920s. Maybe this is more like what's going to emerge is more like a farm system where the big schools are going to you want to keep people for a time. You don't want turnover possibly, and you want to develop talent. So a farm system will work much better. And Charlotte is developing a farm Michigan.
So this actually came from my buddy in Croatia. He's a Dinamo Zagreb fan. They basically, the Croatian football is to develop talent and sell to man in Europe. And so when we were talking about this back in January, he's like, so he just says, like, so why don't you have a transfer fee system? Because he's like, if your players are being bid away, then why don't you? And I said, well, we know there's no contract. But conceivably, you could, right? Have a transfer system where Duke would pay Charlotte for the right to recruit them, which would be much like a farm system, right, where you're basically developing talent. Yep, exactly. Exactly. So, whether it's a transfer system that's formalized in terms of bidding, or if it's just a form of revenue sharing for sakes. But I mean, yes. So anyway, it was brought up by other people. It was obvious you just have a way of compensating the team that's being won. Losing their talent. Again, sounds plausible. Doubtful that it's going to happen. But you're right. I mean, if you let the market just do its thing, it was probably separated. Just like this. I know people that get very excited that like a player can transfer, say, one EPL team to another EPL team as an EPL team is being run. And we're like, that doesn't sound right. Like you should suffer, right? You ride that guy down, and then maybe after a year you can go ahead and transfer back up. So I do wonder if you get to other games and shit like that, or people be tanking.
Probably the last question you ever kind of clear from a lawyer. Could you go back to your model for a moment?
You don't know me.
And what I'm trying to figure out without looking at the model is, when Richard brought up women's basketball, it actually got me thinking, I think on what he was asking was, could we be seeing a spurious correlation here? And is it possible that the substantial increase in popularity in women's basketball in a world where we only have so much free time has been affecting the popularity of men's basketball rather than the transfer issue itself?
Great question. I'm going to say, yes, we know, because the popular, I mean, to me it seems like the biggest popularity of South Carolina, Iowa, USC, UCLA. I don't think there's been any dramatic improvement on that. Charlotte, for instance, attendance for women's basketball, quad women's basketball, we don't have a superstar. But it's a question that, maybe on the aggregate, there is a substitution effect. I mean, I think there was another paper that just showed that women's basketball ticket pricing is much more competitive than men's. And so maybe that's one that suggests that schools are figuring out a way to attract this. Is that what you meant by model?
Yes.
To say like model, like you mean like theoretical model, like empirical. You know me, I bet.
Regression formula, I'm sure I'm using the wrong word, but.
I like it though. Formula.
Just a comment. I appreciated staring at your graphs where the lines were kind of moving all over the place. I've been staring at a similar looking graph with in the high school recruiting distribution. That's exactly like that. Where it seems relatively stable steady state yet, right? Like, there's just been too much transition that, things haven't stabilized, right? That, there's massive inefficiencies, and behavior is not settled, because the market keeps changing.
Right.
I guess as a profession, we'll have to decide, like, how we treat, especially research on this stuff in the moment, because I can't imagine there's anything that's like really definitive, at least by most, I guess, standards that we typically look for.
Yes, it feels like if we're writing about artificial intelligence, by the time you get the paper written, it's already dated, so, I mean, literally, this paper is already dated because it doesn't happen. Also, I've been thinking too, let's imagine that Duke doesn't care about, Duke has a steady state of good players, and so they would much rather Charlotte take the risk of firing down in the rough, right, than, stealing. So in that sense, you may see no difference in terms of the actual first-year distribution of recruiting, because Duke is still not gonna take the risk on the down in the rough. They still want Charlotte to go that risk, right?
Well, unless Duke is getting more transfers now, right, and they're relying more on earlier talent, but that'd be the only kind of counter argument there.
But that's after the first year.
Right.
That's what, so I think that maybe what's driving a lot of this, I don't know, but we've had the same question, is that what's happening with the distribution of first year? The 5 stars should be one to Duke. Duke should not be getting 2 stars. 2 stars goes to Charlotte and become 4 stars. The same thing would be happening in football, and I guess they would do the same thing, right, with the ratings. 5 and that. The 2-star recruit becomes a 4-star player. And that's what they're sucking towards. Come to Charlotte and play for a year. You can actually play. But it's good, interesting, say, the same, not pattern. 2 minutes. Excellent. I'll let the next guy go next.